Well, happy Friday, everybody. It's Nick Slavic, proprietor of the Nick Slavic Painting and Restoration Company, host of Ask a Painter Live with Nick May here today. Nick May owns Walls by Design, a really impressive residential painting company here in Denver, and we are here for Crank 2.0, the big banner behind us. So, what is Crank? Why is it 2.0?
Well, it's what is Crank? Crank is all about building a good foundation for your painting business, and we came up with the idea. I don't know. It's spawned out of the podcast, the Business Brush podcast, and so I wanted to share information and get guys a good foundation for starting, running, growing their painting business. And the three kind of, I guess, stool legs that we focus on here at Crank are systems, financials, and marketing. And not necessarily in that order, but that's what we're going to focus on. And did you ask me another question? What's Crank?
Why is it 2.0?
Oh, it's 2.0 because it's the second one we've done.
It's the second one we've done.
I don't know what we're going to do on the next one. I don't think we'll go to 3.0. But I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah, we did the first one back in April, and so we've got at that one we had guys not only come from coast to coast all over the country, but also in Canada. And this one we do as well have folks coming from guys and gals from coast to coast, but we do not, unfortunately, have folks coming from Canada. But we do have someone here that was born in
England,
the UK.
Yep.
Yeah.
So my fellow countryman
That's right.
from
Your
Minnesota,
neighbor.
my state in Chris Mole is going to be here. So and he's originally from across the pond there. So so today on Ask a Painter Live, this is a weekly live Facebook show where I use my over 2 decades of experience as an entrepreneur and a craftsman to answer any questions. Now, homeowners, this is a chance where you can ask anything you've ever wanted to ask a painter. There is not a painting question that Nick and I can't answer. And for business owners, this is a supercharged episode for business. So I will happily answer some oil primer questions if they come across. We're going to go heavy into our two business models. We have two very different businesses.
We do.
We do a lot of the same things. We have two different philosophies of running our business. Our businesses have two different shapes. We have two different personalities, and we're here to sort of go over the pros and cons of them. But basically, we will come to the conclusion, as usual, that we all build something based on our personality, and there's not a solution to this.
No, there's not a right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
And I think we can all learn from each other.
Yep.
And we take bits and pieces from all over the place. I love actually learning from folks outside of our industry.
Oh, yeah.
And because I think if we stick too much in just that lane, we just start hearing the same things over and over. And so I go outside of the industry. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I learn and listen from a lot of different people.
Yeah. So thank you to the PDCA, the Painting and Decorating Contractors of America, for underwriting this and letting us do what we do. I already see some questions coming in, so we will get to those in just a second. The PDCA submits a contractor question of the week, and this week it comes from a young painting contractor. And I thought this somebody knew that we were coming here. They wrote me a question the week previous. How do you know when it's time to hire your first non-painter for your painting business? And then what role should I hire first? Admin, sales, production manager, something else? Nick May has a lot more experience in this than I do. So again, this is going to be a series of possibly unsatisfying answers where we start everything we say with, it depends.
It does depend. I think we should both answer this.
Yes.
Coming from the different directions. And so to give you for folks that don't know me, I've been a paint contractor for almost 20 years. I grew up in Chicago, painting throughout college, and took some time off. Got my marketing degree, had a couple jobs, moved to Denver with my wife, and a little over 20 years ago, we bought a house. I went to Home Depot of all places, and on New Year's Eve, no less.
Yeah.
And while we were doing that, there was only one guy behind the counter. I started helping everybody else there, figuring out what rollers, what brushes, what paint they should buy. And that was the impetus for me to go, this is what I know, I should go back into painting. So now I've been here in Denver for 20 years, I did it for 5 years throughout college. So just to give people a little background on me who don't know who I am.
And I'll hold right there, because you and I grew up in a painting business.
Mm-hmm.
You did experience it in college and came back. Those two genesis stories of how people become painters encapsulates 98% of all painters in America.
Yep.
Like when somebody is a painter and runs a professional painting business, they come from usually one or two things, and we encapsulate both of those things.
Yeah. So, so for me, I'm a little bit different in the fact that I think a lot of painters who end up owning their own business go and work for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally thrown into it as a college kid. I did 1 week of training in a classroom over spring break, and from there I had to figure out how to hire, train, how to paint, what to buy, how to sell, like all that stuff.
Was this a franchise?
It was a company called AAA Student Painters, which I've been told is not around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I have run into guys through the podcast that actually had the same start story.
Oh, interesting.
Kevin, is it Kevin Young? He's up in Canada.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, he had started from the same exact company as well. So I'm literally self-taught. Like, no one ever, said, all right, tomorrow, Nick, we're going to do this, and then you're going to learn that. There was no trajectory. It was all my questions came from going to the local Benjamin Moore store, and the guy's going, all right, Nick, you need a power washer.
Yeah.
Or Nick, you didn't get all the paint off. Or so it was finding
Trial by fire.
Exactly. It was learning the hard way, really.
Yep.
And then I got smart. I started hiring guys that knew more than me.
Oh yeah.
And then they were teaching me how to paint.
Yep.
So that was pretty good.
So, and then, sort of similarly, I was forced into indentured servitude at 10 years old in the family business. And
I've tried not to do that with my boys.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's tempting, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we both kind of come across it where a little bit trial by fire, a little bit doing this and that. And so then the topic comes up. I'm a young painting contractor, and we're going to lay out a couple scenarios. I'm a single sole proprietor, the proverbial chuck in a truck, which makes up 80% of our industry. Mm-hmm. How do you know when it's time to first hire your first non-painter? And then maybe we'll talk about maybe a 5 or 10 person company and then on. But, from somebody who's sitting there painting by themselves, they're absorbing all the Business Brush group info, Business Brush podcast info, and they're like, I know people have admins and salespeople and this and that. When do I get those?
Okay. I always tell folks, honestly, if a guy's by himself and he's making, he's staying busy,
mm-hmm.
and he's a little far, he's booked out a little ways, the first hire I always tell people is get an apprentice, someone who doesn't have any painting experience, because there's at least 60% of what happens on a job site that takes very little skill.
Yep.
Cleaning your rollers, putting drop cloths down, carrying crap in and out of the house,
mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. So I would say the very first hire is going to be, for me, somebody like that I can get. That person is going to add a lot of value, because that stuff, if we're charging, let's just say we're charging $40 an hour, and I can hire a kid at, let's say, $12
mm-hmm.
an hour, I'm making a good margin on that guy. I can probably manage that person fairly easily.
Yeah.
One person, it's just going to give me just a little bit more bandwidth. Then I'm going to say max that out, make sure you're booked out, you have plenty of work. Then your next hire for me is going to be that part-time admin person.
Mm-hmm.
And that can look a lot of different ways. That could be somebody working from their home and being kind of that virtual assistant.
Yep.
And maybe that's, they're helping you 15 hours a day.
Yeah.
They can be doing billing for you, they could be answering phones.
And for what purpose? So yes, they will. We know what they will do. Why would you have them do that?
So I think imagine you're out there, you're on a job site, right? And you're on a ladder.
Yep.
Can we all visualize that? Close your eyes.
Hold on, let me think if I have any experience with that.
Now the phone rings.
Yeah.
And you're on the ladder.
Yep.
What do you do?
Answer it.
You answer it, because you've either spent time or money to get your phone to ring,
Yep.
and so
Yep.
we want to answer that phone. The worst thing you can do is let it go to voicemail.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're on the ladder. Hello, Nick Slavic Painting and Decorating.
Yep.
And they're asking you questions. Hey, when can you come out? Now you're like, you've got paint on you. You're like, I don't want to get paint on my phone. I'm going to drop my new iPhone just down,
Yep.
18 feet up. There's lots of things that can happen. You're distracted when you're talking to a customer and you're like on the job site.
Yeah.
So I like having that admin person that can do answering phones and having the follow-up with the customers.
Yeah.
Like, hey, so one of the things that we have our office people do is calling or texting. We've now just added the texting feature to our customers and saying, hey, just want to call and confirm that we have an appointment with you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Nick's going to come out. I've got your address at blah, blah, blah. And if everything's still good, then I'm going to go out. A lot of times they'll say, oh, I totally forgot about, can we reschedule? So it makes us a little bit more efficient. They also, our customers really appreciate the fact that they're getting communicated with. So many times they forget, and then they're embarrassed that they forgot.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So there's a lot of little things that the office can do to make us in the field a lot more efficient.
Yep. So if that, and I assume that if you get an apprentice to somebody's got to unload the truck, right? And it might as well be somebody that doesn't have to have a lot of skill. And then you have your part-time admin sort of just running interference, making sure all the logistical things, as far as contact-wise get done. And then I assume you would start adding painters to that mix, because that seems like it has capacity, unused capacity. Because there are people with 20 to 30 person companies with 20 to 30 painters who have a part-time admin. So I assume that that's a empty bucket that you have a lot of room to fill over the years. So then you start adding painters to that mix, revenue generators, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So in contrast to that, and this is why this is going to be very interesting, this summer I was running 22 painters with me, and I was still generating revenue in the field. So there's a lot of ways to run these businesses. So it really depends. It really depends on your personality. So you from the start have always said, I want to build a team, right? And I didn't know if I needed a team or not. So the last 2 years have been an experiment for me in growing a business. But I wanted to see, in the past, when I've seen young contractors add a bunch of painters to the mix, add a bunch of overhead to the mix, and it doesn't work, I don't think they know why. I don't think they know if they're not producing enough or if the overhead's killing them. So my experiment over the last 2 years has been, if overhead's sort of the death knell of growth, let's see how far we can grow with no overhead. And, pros and cons of this, obviously, but 2 ways to approach it like that. So, and we're going to get into some serious pros and cons of each business model here. So, admin, you would suggest maybe an admin first. You start adding painters to that. Sooner or later, you as the business owner, you're going to be painting, and then you're not going to be painting because you're going to have to break up your people. If you have somewhere between 5 and 10 painters, you're probably going to have to parse them out into different groups. And then it seems like the next phase for you as the business owner is getting calls from your guys on site and you having to help them, so then you paint less. If that goes on for a while and maybe you're only a half day, at what point do you add the next, minus all the painters, we'll keep adding painters. At what point do you add the next piece of overhead, and what is it to assist in that? Because that model will break sooner or later.
Yeah, one of the other things that I would add to that is, and the reason why I say, I guess number 2 hire is your admin person, is that very few people are very good at training painters. Okay? And so what I see happen all the time is that guys go to hire painters and they just hire guys. They go steal a painter from this guy, they go steal a painter from that guy, and then all they do is complain that they can't find good employees. Right? And so one of the things that hiring number 2 person in the admin space is that allows you, the painter, I'm going to assume that you're a good painter. It allows you to stay in that production role longer, because as you hire more and more people, then you end up coming out of production regardless, because you do have to play that I'm the trainer role.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you've got, your customers are your lifeblood, and if you're pissing people off, then they're going to go away. They're going to go next. They're going to go down the list.
If you put resistance in that chain of contact.
Yep. And one thing else that I'll mention is I look at phones as a function of marketing.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So don't think of phones as just all overhead admin. Think of it as a form and function of marketing. I'm really big on what's your value proposition.
Yeah.
What value are you bringing? And when you have somebody in your office that is answering phones, and I will say some of you guys have found good companies to outsource this to. An answering service that does a great job. They're few and far between, trust me, because I've used a lot of them. But if you find somebody like that, I think the ideal thing is you find, and this is what I tripped over.
Yeah.
My mom became my outsourced admin person.
Yeah.
She lives in Chicago. This was 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
Basically what happened was my family and I, we were going to Dominican Republic for spring break.
Oh, yep.
And all of a sudden one day I realized, oh crap, I can't not answer my phone and get back to people, over a week long period of time. So I called my mom. She had an office background. I said, Mom, can I ship you a cell phone and you just answer my phones for a week? And it went so great that we just continued.
Yeah.
And so I did go longer than that one person.
Yeah.
But I do recommend to people that number two, and you can find somebody that's looking for 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
In your community.
Easily. Yeah.
And that's just going to take the edge off.
Yep. Yeah, especially of the evening work, as because you're running around as the sole proprietor. You're running around making sure materials are there. It gives you a little bit of that, takes the edge off, I assume, on evenings and weekends. So, so the next sort of way that the general painting business model breaks down is there has to be somebody between you and, well, I suppose this depends on your personality too. If as a sole proprietor, if you're doing all the sales, you're also working a little bit, and you're coordinating your crews, it depends on your personality on which one is going to break first. If you're super good at sales, you might want to get somebody good, maybe running interference between you and all your painters then. If that's where you shine and you're horrible at sales, it may be helpful to add somebody to run interference between you and your clients then.
Yeah. I was, I didn't realize it for a long time, but I'm a horrible project manager.
What makes a horrible project manager?
Attention to detail.
Okay.
I did not have the patience for it.
Okay.
And so it took me a long time to learn that. I think one of the things that all entrepreneurs need to be able to do is they need to understand and take a really hard look at themselves and know what you're good at and what you're not so good at. And for me, that was definitely one of the things. I'm still a good salesperson. I have since, added team members to do that, but project management was a very early thing that I needed to go, okay, you have more patience than I do. You go do this and do it well.
And I think that's, for a lot of people, the majority of people who own painting businesses, that's usually one of the first things to add, or the next thing to add, because it's not client facing. We always get nervous when we put somebody between us and the client, because we think very highly about our skills and our value proposition. And if we take that away, we created this thing to live out our core goals and ethics and morals. And if the client never meets us and gets those directly, we're always fearful that they won't get translated as much. The whole face of your company will be this one person then, like that. So that's always a tricky proposition. So
how many teams do you have running right now?
So this is in the theme of the last 2 years of my life. This is all Flux. So we started the year with 10, 22 in the summer, and we'll take about 15 through the winter. So we break those off into 2-person teams, and that's how we usually, run. And how much, I probably should mention now that, again, this is an experiment that I'm going through, and it's a phase to go through. I don't imagine I can run a 22-person painting crew with me doing everything and then 22 painters out there. So this is a time where I'm gathering data and trying to figure out, which piece is next for me. And in sitting down with Art Snarzik, the person who helps people with this sort of thing, we realized that normally, for most painters, he would probably recommend admin to do that. My admin is so sleek and so streamlined that in my case, we actually decided that a production manager would probably be the next piece, like the low-hanging fruit. Now, we should add all. I go into that saying we should have a salesperson, we should have an admin, and we should have a production manager. But right now, if we're going to slowly add pieces of overhead, production manager right now seems like the one for me, with my personality, with my business type. So, but a lot of that depends on, again, with this experiment that I'm doing, I've basically built in 2 years 0 to 22 painters off of just good people I find on the street. So how much production management needs to be done is solely dependent on the experience level of the people, because I don't have an experienced painter. Well, I have experienced painters that I've created. I have not hired a painter. They're all just people like that. So
yeah.
So
what happens when you go out of town?
The company runs itself right now. So yes, right now sales have stopped, but again, sales process is so streamlined that there is this huge backlog of work, and with the market the way it is now, there is not a worry of running out of work. If I took myself out for a month, not great for your business, but still able to run. But I could not completely remove myself from the business like that. But right now, with the work that we have logged, I mean, we could easily, if we rode this thing into the rocks, it'd be 6 to 7 months of just me handing work orders out and people doing work and seeing the to-do list shrink and shrink and shrink. So
what if you found yourself tomorrow in the hospital?
So I have been pulling aside not only my leadership team and the rest of my company and bringing them to the inside of how the business works. So right now, if I had to, not only do I have some trusted people that I could do a stopgap sales thing with, but everything beyond sales would be the only tricky thing. Everything else in my company could be easily picked up right now. Now, they wouldn't do it as efficiently as me, but nobody does.
Right.
Nobody's going to do that for us. So right now, I could not put myself in the owner's box and take myself completely out of the business, but not many painting companies could, like that. So yeah, that's sort of, so maybe we should talk a little larger about, so we're talking about adding overhead. And so pros and cons of business models like ours. So right now, what does your sort of business, what does it look like? Who's doing what?
Yeah. So I want to do, actually, so I want to back up just a second.
Sure.
Obviously we have two completely different businesses. And one of the things that I like to tell people, even though I tell my story, I'm very passionate about the way I've built my business. I'm passionate about the reasons why we do things. But I always tell people, you need to build your business for your lifestyle.
That's a good point. Yep.
What you want out of life. How do you want to spend your time? Do you have a family? I mean, we've got one of the guys in the Business Brush group, single guy out on the East Coast. He can work as much as he wants. He doesn't have you and me have kids and a wife that's going, what time, where are you? And so all that stuff factors into what do you want. I think it also factors into how old are you?
Yep.
I'm 46.
36.
You're 36. So a little bit different phases of life.
Yep.
Not a huge difference, but I'm 4 years away from being an empty nest.
Yeah.
My
that's
kids,
huge.
my boys being off to college. And so we're already building, I've been building systems and processes to get me ready there. So that's another factor that all has to play into this. For me, I watched my dad have a business. He was an entrepreneur. Never really figured out how to make it more than just him and some other people. He was always the linchpin, right? And so I've always, since I started my business, I wanted me to be out of being the linchpin as fast as possible. And so I like my independence.
Yeah.
I like to travel. Anybody who listens to me knows that I travel a lot,
Yep.
especially during certain periods of the year. In a week, I'll leave for Italy and France and be gone for a week and a half. If I didn't have people in my office booking new projects, taking in checks and running credit card, our business would stop.
Oh, yeah.
We'll run payroll while I'm gone, probably.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a huge thing that people need to understand, and it doesn't happen overnight. There's a
No.
lot of building and a lot of things that you have to get ready before
Yeah.
you can have staff.
Exactly. So what basically, we're two painters sitting here. We're operating businesses at the same time on this earth. What you have to understand is that it's a snapshot in time of businesses in two very different stages. I've been a painter for 25 years. I've owned my own business for 10 or 11. But really, over the last 2 years, I've been introduced to what a real business looks like.
Yeah, you kind of had an aha moment.
Yeah, it was huge. And, it was being introduced to the PDCA, a business brush shortly after, talking to other, inspired, progressive young entrepreneurs. And it really sort of, I grew up in a very regressive family business. So you get that myopic vision of you can't imagine anything beyond that because you don't have any other examples. Like, you understand people have employees. But the interesting thing over the last 2 years has been, this is, it's a snapshot in time of moving towards something, and I very well may end up with something that looks like yours, and I may not. I'm just trying to figure out now, I love the idea of first principle reasoning where because you're a prominent person on social media, people look at your business model and think, oh man, if I don't have that, I'm a failure. Well, maybe not. Somebody may want to create something completely different, and with first principle reasoning, you break things down to their core thing, and when you have a problem, you say, well, here's what most people do with that problem. But what if you just tried something else? What is actually the problem? And I like going back and saying, well, I know businesses with not that much overhead. I know businesses with lots of overhead. We have lots of examples out there. Let's test the boundaries of that so we actually know what's capable of that. And then within that, you find where your personality, because we have project management. Sometimes we're good at it, sometimes we're not. I think we have to be smart enough to put people around us who are good at all the things we're bad at. And I think that's that's when you take it from one painter into something much larger. What it looks like depends on what you're bad at, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm bad at the details. So I need other people to come around me to help me, pick up those details and really, and I'm, so what am I good at, I think, is the next question.
Yeah,
and that's,
yeah.
I'm big picture.
Yeah.
I'm visionary. Hey, this is where we're going, and let me lay out a plan of how we get there.
Yeah.
And then I need other people to come around me and say, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, so that we can get to that.
Grab your idea and then make sure it actually gets to the ground and get something done.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about salespeople, admin people, production managers, a little more. We should probably go through some questions here. We got tons of people watching today, and lots of familiar names too. So a lot of people watching, coming to Crank here. So let's know, lots of people watching. You guys can type any of your questions in. We can take a bunch of those now. Look at those things. Isn't that fancy?
Are they seeing that backwards, or do they see that frontwards?
They see it backwards. It's mirrored.
do?
So yeah. Russ Perry, as usual, thank you for watching. Kayla Payne, thank you for watching. Jay Mason. Let's see. Aaron Guppy, thanks for watching. Ryan Trury, he's on his way.
Ryan's on his way.
He's on his way with his wife.
He was the last person to sign up for Crank.
So he got in just as the gates were closing.
He did.
If let's see here. Let's go back down. Hey, Bautarde, my friends down in Brazil there. Daniel Lindquist.
Buddy of mine here in Denver just got married to a gal from Brazil.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
her whole
awesome.
family came up. I met them. That was last Saturday.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Fun. Aaron Guppy, Crank XS should be the next name. Jeff DuPont. Jeff DuPont's coming, isn't he?
Jeff is in Denver right now as we speak. I
Oh,
believe.
that's awesome.
And actually,
That's
he may
awesome.
be in the building. I don't know. I told him.
Nice.
I told him to come. This
So-
building. I don't, if we have time, we should walk around and give a tour. But it's kind of a big maze. It's kind of crazy.
It's a labyrinth. It's the coolest old building ever, and we are in the catacombs right
We
now.
are in the basement of. It basically was built as a church.
Yep.
And then it sat for years. And then a guy that I know here in town owns a very large landscape company, and he bought it, and then kind of has fixed it up, and we took the west wing.
And there's also a full-size basketball court inside.
There is.
Inside, so that's
Yeah.
cool. David Delgado Candalis. Best gel stain to use? Saying hello from Lancaster. All right, so gel stain. It depends what you're doing. I use gel stains in 2 to 3 different ways. Number one, I use it just as a general stain. If you have some blotchy wood, if you had crappy pine, like all windows are made out of pine nowadays. I know staining is one of your favorite topics.
I have a question, actually. It's brewing. I'm going to ask a question about staining.
I will make this real quick. So I use gel stain in 3 ways. As a general stain, like a wiping stain for blotchy wood, for fiberglass doors that need a color to put a grain on them, and for decorative stuff. So this last winter, finished off a basement. The guy wanted to make it look like a 1700s English pub, and that meant the stairs were very cool looking oak, but he wanted all the corners of the stairs to look like they've been catching soot and dirt.
You were faux finishing.
I was faux finishing. So I actually...
Or fox finishing,
Fox,
as some
fox
people would
finishing,
say.
yep. So I actually aged them with black stain there. Now, one of my favorites is General Finishes. They seem to have very heavily pigmented gel stains and gel varnishes. That's helpful because normally we do very, very dark colors, and it also gives you the ability to thin it to make it lighter and a little more easy to work with. A lot of times when I gel stain doors, I'll put in Penetrol with it because I like oil stains. Penetrol is an oil additive that will basically create longer open time with it, and when you do that, you do dilute it. So I like to start with something very heavily pigmented. I mean, it's basically like toner ink. It's just a disaster. If you get anything on you, it's just throw everything away that you have it on. So that's one of my favorite. It depends really what you're using with it. In my kit, I have a stain kit that I take around. So like I just restored a front door this last 2 weeks here, and I take my stain kit with me because I never know how I want to blend. I have a ton of general finishes, and I have a ton of Minwax gel stains. They are very, very good, and one of the better things too is they're readily available. So there's tons of awesome products that we could import from Yugoslavia, but as business owners, we also need it to be efficient. So, you know, when you need that gel stain at the last minute, Sherwin-Williams carries Minwax, so you're going to be able to find Minwax somewhere. So
I have a question on gel stains.
oh, absolutely.
So I've seen, I guess what I've seen gel stains used a lot for recently is guys and homeowners taking a gel stain to their kitchen cabinets,
Absolutely.
and then they don't last.
Yeah, they absolutely do not.
And that's because they're not putting a clear coat or something over the top of them?
Here's, I have way more knowledge about gel stain than is useful or is good or is whatever. Also, my wife, not impressed at all with my knowledge of gel stain. So, gel stain is a crappy stain, and it's a crappy varnish because it's half and half, you know. So when you put pigment in a finish, you're making a crappy finish, and you're ruining the adhesion. Pigment
Kind of like paint and primer in one?
It's exactly paint primer in one.
I call it the spork.
The spork. It is. It's fairly useful if you don't care what you're using it for.
You're selling the house.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when people, I'm sure you get a ton of calls too. I have golden oak cabinets. I want them mahogany color. Well, yes, I can do that. I can do it to a very high degree. I can spray it. I can brush it. I can do whatever else. It chips like crazy.
Yep.
And
does not hold up.
because it's a not a good finish. Pigment ruins paints and finishes. Pigment is just colored dirt that you put in stuff, and the more pigment you do, like if anybody's used a can of mixed black paint, not the premix from the factory, if you take a can of wall paint and want to tint it black, there's this much paint taken out of that, the good stuff, the titanium dioxide, all the stuff that makes paint wonderful, and then they fill it with this crappy stuff that doesn't dry very well, is sticky, doesn't protect. So adhesion issues come from the pigment.
Right.
It's just not great. So the way I use that stuff is, also top coating is big, like you said, especially with front doors. Over bare fiberglass, gel stains seem to adhere better than over lacquered oak cabinets, and that's where almost all the other gel stain is used.
There's a lot of places for it to grab onto though on that.
Absolutely. And the fiberglass, I think just by its nature, just that mechanical bond probably has more of the little crags and stuff like that, whereas lacquered oak, not so much.
Pretty solid. Yep.
I'm not a fan. I get asked to do it all the time, and you probably do more cabinets than anybody we know. I'm sure it comes across your bow every once in a while.
Oh, people ask us to do all sorts of stuff, strip and re-stain. Can you do a gel stain? My friend did this. They turned out great. I'm like, call them in 6 months. Let me know how that looks.
Yep. And what's interesting to me is, so I get a call and they say, hey, gel stain my oak cabinets. I want them dark oak. They're light oak now. And they send me a picture from the internet, and all it is brush strokes. And you think, if that's the standard, I can knock that out in 2 hours. I mean, you don't even need to take the hardware off for that. I can show up with a hog hair brush, and I can do that. And it's like, I would hope you would expect more than that sort of thing. So, okay, let's see who else we got here. Oh, Dustin Zapanzik. Love Dustin Zapanzik. Awesome contractor. Russ Perry, I'm scared to ask about products in case Nick throws me out of the business press group. So,
they know me. I'm consistent.
I love it. So this is Ask a Painter, and I will invite product stuff. So
you've already gotten me talking about gel stain.
I know.
Seriously.
Listen, of all people, of all things to talk about. So we are the yin and the yang here, where Nick May will never stop throwing up into a trash can if you start talking about paint. I, on the other hand, absolutely love it. I can't get enough of it. So Wes Malgren, he is my friendly Sherwin-Williams rep, and probably out hunting this weekend in Minnesota. Aaron Guppy, what is your most used filler for trim nail holes? So I love
crickets.
I think
I'm like, I don't know, that little can of something that my guys buy. I don't know.
Your knee-jerk reaction is, I can't even talk about any coating. So no, we do two things.
That's why I don't talk about it.
We do two things. It depends on the builder and the client. A lot of times we will use drywall mud that's tinted so we can see the nail holes. Mid to lower end project, if somebody needs something to meet a price point, that stuff will go in. It'll dry quick. It'll sand smooth.
Drywall mud.
Yeah, you use the stuff that dries a little harder. But we do
ready
also
mixed,
use
or you mix it.
Ready mix. No, I'm not a big fan of mixing my own. It's there's not a real benefit to that. Like in Minnesota, everything freezes in our vans for 6 months. So I used to carry around the quick mud, the 10-minute or the 5-minute.
Yep.
And what do you think happens when you carry around bags of that white powder in your vans?
And it's humid. Right. We don't have that problem here. It's like,
no. My nose is whistling.
I know. I keep pushing water on them.
I don't need it. Yeah. No, but you carry around these bags of stuff, and you got so many young people out there making it happen in the world, and the bags open up, and pretty soon you've got 5 pounds of white powder in the bottom of all of your totes and everything else. So I'm a big fan of using that. Otherwise, wood filler. A bunch of Ask a Painters ago, I did a whole bunch of tests of a lot of wood fillers suggested from people. I found this magic little product, Ace Hardware, water-based wood filler, dries rock hard. You can almost tap it with like a tap and a die. It's so hard. It sands easily, which is cool, and it actually dries quick. So of all the things that you want wood fillers to do, like I know a lot of guys, even guys that I really look up to in the industry, they use the red Bondo spot filler. That stuff shrinks, and a lot of guys have to fill twice. And especially in new construction where you're competing on a market that's very, very tight, going around filling all the nail holes and sanding them twice.
Ugh.
I mean,
it's all about efficiency.
It's all about efficiency. So I found this stuff that doesn't shrink. And if you use like the all-purpose mud or a mud that's a little harder, not that ultra lightweight, easy sandable stuff, it actually works pretty well. And it depends on your client's price point. Again, sometimes it's not for us to decide. So, okay, Danny Airy. Eddie Barbeau, he's coming here, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yep. So Eddie's coming here, if not here already. Okay, here we go. Russ Perry, question for Nick May. Are paid mentoring groups a good investment for a young company?
I'm going to say yes.
And,
I
and
think-
what would be an example of one of those?
So, paid mentoring groups. I don't know any current ones now because I've been out of that kind
Would
of
it be like
phase of my
Nolan?
life.
I always hear about Nolan Consulting. They're painters and they consult with other painters. That's one specific to our trade. I'm sure there might be
I wouldn't say that's a beginner one. I would say that's once you've been doing it.
because
a
they're pretty
while.
hardcore into
I think.
numbers.
I don't know as much about Nolan
Yeah.
as. So I was. There's a lot of different ones out there. Many years ago, I was in one that was here local. They tried to franchise, it didn't go anywhere. But what I liked about it was they would invite. They would form these board of advisor groups, and so there would be 10 to 20. Let's just say 15 business owners, and we would meet once a month. And when we would get together, we would talk about our business. We would talk about challenges that we had, and you get to learn from all sorts of other businesses. So there's a networking element to it. It was low cost. Of course, I couldn't refer you to something that's out there today because that company folded. But I thought it was great. A lot of friendships came out of that. I learned a ton. I felt like I was doing more of the mentoring than a lot of the other people.
Yeah.
But I think there was a lot of great value in that. You can probably get some of that maybe through a local chamber of commerce.
Yep.
They're out there, and I think there's like Tab. Is Tab one of those?
I don't know Tab. I know SCORE. Society of Retired Executives. It's guys that have,
Sure.
been at the helm of large
But
businesses.
isn't that more like one-on-one mentoring?
Yeah, I think. But
I
they have
like
a
the
network.
I like the small group model.
Yes.
Similar
Yeah.
to what we're going to do here this week.
Yep.
But if you could have a group of 10 other
Yeah.
business owners. Now, here's what I did. So I first was paying people to do this. And then I was like, shit, I know enough business owners.
Yep.
I could put this thing together myself.
Yep.
So what I did for a couple years is I had maybe 5 or 6 companies, and we would popcorn it from one office to another office, and we would meet once a month. We would read, sometimes we were reading books together, and we would come together and we would talk about what we liked about the book or what we didn't like about the book. So, and sometimes we'd go out to dinner, so maybe every third month we'd be like, all right, let's just meet at Ruth Chris. So we'd go out to a nice, so that was the cost. Instead of paying a company to organize this thing, we organized it ourselves. And, you're not in competing businesses, so you can share anything and everything. And the one tricky thing that I did find about that was you're not doing it to get business and work with each other, but you do.
You do get business for sure.
And then that was weird because you've already told people like how much money you make or how what your profit margin. So that was a little bit weird.
But that's natural.
But
it was. To trust
but it was
people
pretty
and,
low on the on the problem scale. But I really liked that, and I just don't have the bandwidth right now to do it again. But that's I think those groups are great.
Yeah. So there is SCORE. That's a little more one-on-one. The good thing about SCORE is it's a bunch of retired executives, or some even I know some that are non-retired executives. They're
Here's
just
what I
at the,
don't like about that idea, and I've never experienced it, but this
Sure.
is my brain thinking. You got some old retired guy, and if it's anything like my old retired father-in-law, who, when I was doing it, blah, blah, he doesn't know what's going on today necessarily. Like, business has changed in the last 10 years, especially in the last 20 years. And so I liked working with guys that were doing it today, that are having today's challenges. But I love getting around old guys because there are certain things in business. If you can find an old retired executive or old, some guy that ran a company. There's a guy here in town who started a company called Colorado Ski and Golf, Jerome Grady, and that guy's phenomenal. And sales skills and people skills and how do you merchandise and how do you buy right. Like he was all about buying. He was a retailer, and so he was always about how do we buy this thing right so that I can make it on the back end. But fantastic guy, but he's been out of business for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So there is value in the retired guys, but you have to understand they've been out of the game.
Take it for what it's worth,
right?
They're a data point that may help you with certain things. I mean, speaking with somebody who's seen a business life cycle, built wealth, can at least advise you on some of those things. So also something that I did this last year was economic gardening. So There's a lot of paid economic gardening
And
groups.
that's through Chamber of Commerce?
So this one is...
We had that, I think, through our chamber.
I think chambers can sponsor it. Mine ended up being through the county because we come from a small town. But there's a gentleman, if you're interested, his name is Steve Quello, Quello. The guy who invented kitty litter made a fortune and then left his fortune for entrepreneurs. And part of the it's the Edward Lowe Foundation. The Edward Lowe Foundation sponsors these economic gardening sessions, and I found out about mine through my county. This is exactly kind of what you did. There's a group of 10 to 15 decision makers, executives, business owners at different stages of business, but all trying to grow. And they bring them together, again, from a region, so you have some commonality, but nobody in the same industry. So you're not going to be sitting there with a competitor. And same thing. Everybody mentors each other, and the best part about it was free through the county. So I would definitely look up the Edward Lowe Foundation. Steve Quello was my point man for it. He does it in multiple states too, so he may be able to help you with it. And the good thing is, I just found out that my group was such a, we got along so well. We are continuing. We decided to voluntarily keep the group going after. I think it was like a 6 or 9 month run. Yep. And this isn't one of those bitch sessions where you stand around and you're like, oh, I got this stupid guy. It's not that. The meeting has a very distinct flow. And anybody who starts wandering off immediately gets shut down, and it's purposeful. So it really teaches you to be intentional, because you're gathering, I mean, these economic gardening groups would sometimes go on for, somewhere between 4 and 5 hours at a time. And when you're pulling in all these people who are very important to their businesses, you want to keep it distinct. And each person gets a chance to go around the table, make an ask of the group, and then possibly get something solved. And the benefit, and it was way more beneficial for me, because I was the smallest business in the group. So we had, CEOs of large manufacturing companies, tech companies, all this and that, guys who have done PayPal sort of things. And it's like, then there's me, and I was raking in the knowledge there. So.
And I love that. I love it's, but I will tell you, it's very intimidating when you're the guy and you're like, I'm just a little paint contractor, and you're talking to this guy who's got this $10 million. But man, now that I've got a little bit of years on me, and I realize I love being the dumb guy in the room.
It's the best.
I mean, learning from all these other guys. I mean, and they don't care. Like
they are so happy. They are so happy to help. And what's interesting was that everybody was able to contribute in a certain way, because people are the through line through all of our businesses. And every time somebody would make an ask of it, it's not, geez, I wonder how I make an income statement. That's science. That's proven. That's done. It's always a people issue, and we have lots to contribute with that. So even me on the low end, all I've been doing is people experiments for 2 years. So everybody's good. Anyway, there's lots of options out there for you. The idea is to surround yourself with people who are much smarter than you, that are going through things you're doing now, and basic business brush group, PDCA, economic gardening. Those all have a lot of through lines through them with that, and that's why they're effective. So let's see what else we got here. Brian Cumming from Benjamin Moore. Thank you. Oh, our friend John. We love John. Let's see. Blake, Brian, thank you guys for watching. Jenny Bloomberg. Melanie Carroll. Those make good labors. Eddie Garman. I work by myself. Sometimes we all do. Let's see who else is on here. Melanie Carroll. Better make sure he's a professor or a professional. Well, let me see the rest of this. Stop. All right, it's not going to let me see it. Sorry. We're trying to see the rest of your thing here. It's not letting us through. Natalie Newbert. Aaron Shaver, one of my apprentices, is on vacation right now. Let's see who else we got here. Oh, John Newbert. Here we go. Come on, scroll up.
We were talking about John yesterday.
We were talking about John. Because John's got an awesome... Yeah, see, it's not letting me... Okay, if you want to scale and grow, you usually have to take on extra people overhead in advance of the growth. And I assume that's the gist of it. And I would
agree. You have to prepare. You have to lay that foundation, so that, because otherwise what will end up happening if you grow too fast and you don't have that layer of support for you, you're going to fall on your face. You're going to have too many calls coming in. We field, my office currently fields about 130 calls a month. that's estimates.
That's a lot.
What would happen if you had 130 calls a month coming in?
Well, that depends. Right now, my experience with my market and my clients is that I can still, if I normally cycle through my contacts, so email, social media, calls 3 times a day. Check them all in the morning, check them all midday, check them all at the end of the day, and do that. I've found no kickback, and in fact, I've found a lot of surprise that if I get somebody on the schedule or an estimate within 24 hours, they seem so surprised that I can do that. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So right now, that's not been my experience with my business. I know you're very big on, don't let it go to voicemail, answer immediately, get some things done. So far, of all the things that need work in my business, the chain of contact is not one. I've not had any kickback. And I actually feel that from the point that they decide to actually do something to contact me to the point that they get their estimate, at least in my market, I'm doing well above average in that time. Mm-hmm. Actually getting them that. So I have the benefit of not painting anymore, so that if I get a lot of email inquiries, I cycle through them in the morning. By 6 in the morning, I've sent out 6 email inquiries, estimates. People send me pictures, I send them out an estimate. So yes, can be better. Right now, that's not on fire. Yeah. So it's been interesting. And again, everybody's got different markets. And right now, in Minnesota, you have to consider, if you want something done in Minnesota, we have like 6 weeks of outdoor painting left. There will not be a painter who answers their phone right now. This is go time. So if you're 1, 2, 3, 4-man outfit, you are going 14 hours a day. You're doing what you can. You're not even picking up your phone because your schedule is already starting to book into next year, and you're just trying to finish people off before October 31st, which is normally a line of demarcation when the temps drop too far. So right now, the client experience, and I've been asking people about this, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Thank you for at least getting a hold of me again. Thank you for calling me back, and let alone getting them an estimate in 24 hours. So it's been interesting. It's been really interesting. But I know if anybody's got the good information, it's John Newbert. He's a master. He kind of scales up super heavily in the summer, right? And then sort of,
I'd love to go visit John's shop. And
it'd be very interesting.
Operation.
Ryan Trury, walking into the airport now. See you guys soon. Eddie Garman, it's hard to be everywhere and still do the work, always running. And that's the tough part. What I'm slowly being introduced to are, some people call them death valleys. I don't like that much hyperbole, but there are some stages of a paint business that are way more painful than others because you hit critical masses.
Steps.
Exactly.
I talk about them as steps. Some steps are small.
Yep.
Some steps are humongous.
Yep. And one of the most useful things is...
It's not this nice, easy...
No, it's definitely not like that. It's like you have to do a bunch of stuff here, and then it's not... Whatever got you here incrementally will not get you there. Then you have to do a bunch of other stuff and different stuff too. Yeah. So it's not just adding a painter, adding a this, adding a that. A lot of things have to change, and I'm slowly being introduced to, like, based on my personality, based on my market, based on the work we do, like, where are those certain things, And then you throw in the personalities of your apprentices and their plans to either stay with you or not, and all of a sudden this becomes a tricky... Some of that is dictated by you, and some of it is not, which is weird.
I just had this thought, and I've never really said this before, but it kind of makes sense. Tell me what you think on it.
Yeah.
If you're a young paint contractor, one of the things that I think could give you a lot more time in your schedule is to be very disciplined about the radius in which you work. So Denver Metro is humongous, right? Big, it's just like Minneapolis, big circle around. And I have always, I guess when I was first starting, I was kind of just down south. But very quickly, I was like, wherever you are, I'm going to come to you.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And so you're running all over the place. But then you defeat yourself by continuing to market to all those different places, right?
Yep.
At least that's what I did. And what I should have done is I should have stayed small down in the south, and then as people up here said, "Hey Nick, would you come look at my work?" I should have just said no. Let me just continue to go really define, really and be really tight right down in the south.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly grow that circle, because I think one of the things that kills us as a business owner is drive time.
Oh, it's huge. And one of the interesting things I completely agree with you, and especially when you have to work during the day, and if you work 8 to 4, between 4 and 9 might be the time that you're awake.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when somebody calls me from the Twin City Metro, that's about a 2.5 to 2 hour and 45 minute commitment. It's an hour up, you
Right.
do your estimate, an hour back. That's a night for a request, and they may not even be a serious client. They may have been, I wonder what it costs to get kitchen cabinets painted.
Right.
And then that's a night.
Yep.
That's a night. And at some point you have to consider, people are big on profit margins, and your profit margin for 8 hours, tack 2.5 hours onto that every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's time, and you're
Yeah.
doing something for your business. That's huge.
So if you have a problem with saying no to those kinds of things that are too
We
far
all do.
out, here's another solution for you. Charge for estimates that are outside of your radius.
Mhm.
So I remember before I started adding people to like sales and project
Yeah.
management and all that, I remember I first added my admin person.
Yep.
So before I added salespeople, I added
Uh-huh.
admin. And I remember a call up in Broomfield, and we weren't charging a ton,
Mhm.
but I think I charged like $50. Like, I just wanted them to be like, okay, if I'm gonna come an hour,
You want a little skin in the
like
game.
there's, yeah, you've invested.
Yep.
And no, it's not refundable. Like,
Yeah.
it's a $50 fee, and I'm not giving you a credit back
Yeah.
on the painting bid. That's my fee.
Yeah.
To come up to you because you're outside of my normal territory.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's gonna, you don't have to say no, but it will weed out some people.
Yep. And you put that small hurdle in there just to gauge how serious
Yeah.
they are too. So we should probably go over too. At what point did you add your first salesperson? How many painters were you
Man,
running?
I tell you what, adding sales was the hardest thing for me to figure out. I tried every which way under the sun to add a salesperson. All my friends in those small groups that I would meet with, they all told me, you've got to hire a killer salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't figure out how to make that happen. For us,
What were the notable failures? What went wrong with that?
well, I remember one guy I hired. I put him on a base, and you're trying to figure out the compensation for this, right? So you go, okay, nobody will come to work for $0
Full commission.
and full commission. Like, it's hard. So what I remember I said, okay, 3 months, I've got a salary for you, and you're going to slowly go off of that. And as you sell, you're going to build commission. And by the time he got to his 3rd month, he just quit.
So you really didn't even see the full experiment through.
Right.
So.
Right. And then we tried part-time people.
Yeah.
That didn't work. And then I went the other direction and realized I'm a better salesperson, and I hired a project manager.
Yeah. Yep.
And then we got a home run when we moved one of our painters into a sales role.
Oh yeah. And do you think that baseline knowledge helped his estimates be more accurate?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I know that if we're going to go out and look at projects, we're a problem solver.
Yeah.
We need to solve problems, and that's what people are asking us to do when they call us into their house.
So if you had to generalize, why do salespeople fail? Because they just don't estimate accurately? Because I mean, because you have to first principle reasoning, you would think, well, okay, if everybody turns in a perfectly accurate estimate every time, then it's interpersonal skills.
Mm-hmm.
So it must be that most people are pretty good with interpersonal skills, especially if they have a personality type for that. So is the failure always just?
I wish the answer was that simple.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
You got to have somebody that wants to work. We've talked about this in the last 2 days.
Self-starters and all this stuff.
Right. And you've got to have somebody that has a passion for it.
Yeah.
I think for us, finding somebody that knows our system and process is super important, because they can talk directly to it.
They got this baseline of knowledge. You
Right.
don't have to introduce that plus sales.
Yep. On Sunday of this weekend, we're going to talk about what we do for sales process.
Nice.
And I have some theories of what we do and ways that you communicate, so that we're not competing on price.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can hire somebody and they can do numbers and they can run all over town,
Yeah.
and it can all just be price driven.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have a 33% close ratio.
Yep.
And I mean, that's horrible.
Yeah.
By the way, I used to think that was okay. But
I suppose it depends what you're selling.
yeah, yeah.
So, okay. Oh, Ronnie Santos. He's my friend and interpreter down from Brazil. Thanks for watching. David Evans. And let's see if we got any more questions here. Mike Vietro, thank you for watching. Chris Mole. There we go. Chris Mole and his wife are actually here.
Are they in the building?
I don't know if they're in the building.
Elvis is in the building.
They're
because
definitely.
Have you seen the picture of him as Elvis? Like, he's a really good Elvis.
He posted a video, one of the first rounds of the Business Brush group, where he did an Elvis impression. He's really good.
We have to get him to do that.
The English Elvis from Minnesota. It's awesome.
So random.
Tyler Hansen. Oh, you just interviewed him for the Business Brush podcast.
He should be up today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, how long are you going to take to grow the beard back? Well, this is 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
So is mine.
Yeah. David Evans. I am the linchpin. I totally relate to Mr. May. He's at Chris Mole's at the Marriott. Yanni Fakaris, thanks for watching, buddy. Yanni does some awesome work out there too. Bryant Mayo. I believe the individual truly needs to understand and be realistic about their ability to make things happen. And yeah, that's basically been what I've spent my time on over the last 2 years is we talked about this morning too. I went under a self-imposed rehab of let's just list all the bad things about Nick Slavic and then let's make a plan to correct them. And so far I think I've hit 5% on the list, but we'll see. It's been doing really well for business. So Ryan Kohler, I'm here, great chat, thinking about scaling up. I'll be there next time. Mike McGrath, he's at the Marriott too. Apparently this is oh no, he's at the JW Marriott. He's at the wrong Marriott.
He's staying at the JW?
He's at the Marriott. Apparently it's the wrong one. So either he booked at the wrong hotel or he just got dropped off at the wrong hotel.
Just went to the wrong one. Yeah. You gotta.
Oh, Ronnie from Brazil. What's
Courtyard by Marriott. That's
Courtyard.
Hanging out.
Ronnie from Brazil. What's the biggest difficulty that you find when you're about to hire a fully experienced painter? They're horrible people. They're horrible people.
Horrible.
Okay, so
maybe
again,
not horrible people, horrible painters.
Both. So, but again, our experience, right? So
you were talking to painters, right?
Yes. These people are not going out to be hired. These are all business owners. So here's the problem. I am sort of known for the decent human principle of hiring, where I find decent human beings, I bring them in, and I try to indoctrinate them boot camp style into the culture of the business and craftsmanship. This isn't easy, right? I don't do this because of some I want to see how hard I can make my life. I do this because I don't have access to experienced painters. Every year I try to take on maybe 1 or 2 experienced painters.
Backfires every single time.
Backfires every time.
Every time, just had one.
In a world, it used to be 5-10 years ago, you could get a guy who could paint. You could plug him in and he could paint, but he maybe wasn't a good person. In the last 5 years, I haven't even found that. Not good painter, not good person. So why? And again, I am fully willing to admit that this is my market, that I don't have a large sample size. This may be not indicative of the entire market. It might be, though.
I would say the one exception, if you can find somebody that has a little bit of prep experience, they're not a fully fledged painter yet.
Yep.
Not too much crustiness underneath.
Yep.
And maybe they haven't been treated fantastically.
Yeah.
And so if you can bring them on, finish training, give them a really
you're
good
talking about poaching.
Plan. Yeah, but I don't go
But I don't say that as a
them.
negative word. I don't say that as negative. If you can offer him something better than the next guy, that's business.
Yeah, but just not too much. They can't have had 5 years of experience.
Yeah. And it is tough because yes, I speak in generalities, but over the last 5 years, that's been 100% of the data in my experiment. And I have a very high success ratio with finding these decent human beings and just do it that way. So Ronnie, the problem is right now, if Nick and May and I could wave a magic wand, what we would do is find the happiest, most optimistic, self-starting, awesome craftsmen that would work for us the rest of their lives. So we can't get all of those things. There's going to be a lot of variables in there. So if we can't have that, what's the next best? In my market, I would love to find experienced painters. We spend so much time on training. We spent the entire summer training. I had one of my most senior craftspeople training 8 people at once. He dedicated his summer to training. I lost all production from him, basically. I would have loved to have 8 experienced painters who were just like him plugged in. But if I can't have that, what's the next best thing? That's where I find myself. So, and that's where a lot of us find ourselves right now.
Yeah, and I find that, when they say they have experience, they're never going to tell you the bad stuff about them.
They're never going to tell you that experience got them fired from their last job because they were no good.
Yeah. Seriously, you find somebody that's been painting for 10 years that is awesome. Mm-hmm. Why did their last boss not do something to keep them around?
Yeah.
Or why are they not off working by themselves?
2 very good questions, and especially when you compound it with we're at full employment and the labor market, it is a laborer's dream out there right now. They can pick whoever they want to go to, and they can make a lot of asks that could not have been asked for in 2008 or 2009, when basically, I was approached by mid-level corporate managers just looking for something to pay their mortgage, like guys who have been suit and tie guys looking to be a painter for a couple of years. That doesn't happen now. We're not in that market anymore. So Ronnie, thank you so much, sir. We'll talk to you soon. Brendan Ryan, listening from Philly. Let's see what else we got. Oh, Paul Dibdahl. Love Paul Dibdahl. Chris Mole, question for Nick May. What would you change differently if you were to do this all over again, knowing what you know now?
I would have focused earlier.
Focused on what?
So when I first got into painting, probably year 2 or year 3, and we've talked about this, the fact that I was pretty unhappy to tell people that I was a painter.
Yep.
So very low self-esteem.
A little bit self-conscious about it.
Very self-conscious. And so we started doing a lot of things. We started doing flooring and tile and countertops, basically light remodels.
Yep.
And I lost 10 years in my business because of that.
By chasing a whole bunch of
I
other
would have
things.
gotten, it took me about 17 years to get to $1 million. I would have gotten to $1 million in painting 8 years, 9 years earlier, had I focused.
Yeah.
And not tried to be all things to all people and be a big shot and say, I'm a contractor instead of I'm a painter. And that's what I would have done differently. And I see a lot of guys doing it. And we've added, I was telling you last night, that we've added trim carpentry. We added one thing, and even in that, we don't do custom built-ins, we don't do stair parts, we just do base, chair rail, crown, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Very basic stuff.
But it's doing that that makes up 5% of the business as an ancillary thing that sort of relates to it is much different from opening a flooring store.
Right.
Yeah. So
and that's basically what we did.
Yeah.
That's what I would do different, Chris.
And you know what? I would say the same thing. And it's interesting because I know we witness a lot of online discussions of the young guy starting up a painting company, and it's the same thing. You give them the advice, focus, pick a thing, do it well.
Be known for it,
move forward. And they're like, but I want to make, I'll lose this customer and I'll lose this. And I am still sort of in that, but I also I've had to face the reality that I gave up wallpapering. I gave up faux finishing. I gave up a lot of that stuff because, sadly, and I still have a heavy heart about it, but I do also realize that I would have to spend an inordinate amount of my time to please those people. And I do also have to make my family happy as well, too. I could forsake my family and take care of my wallpaper clients, but at some point we do run out of time and we have to make choices.
Yep. I always think master one thing well, get it to scale, then add another thing.
Yeah.
Don't add 5.
Yeah.
Add one.
And not 5 different businesses. Add a guy who does some trim carpentry for the work you're currently doing. Don't add a framing division.
Right.
For that, and chase a completely, just because we're all in the trades doesn't mean it's anything related.
Right.
You're dealing with different people doing different, anyway. But yeah, we see that story all the time, and it's the same thing. It's like, oh, this is going to take 5 years for you to just work through this, and you know it's good advice. They know it's good advice, but they have to prove it to themselves a lot of the times. So the smart ones don't. The smart ones take the advice and do it early, which I would have loved to have that advice early. So, Donnie Kimbler Olson, he was at the first crank.
Donnie.
Love Donnie. Absolutely love Donnie. Christian Militello, our friend from out east. Brian Yelsey. What is a great product for Brazilian cherry wood, stain and clear coat? I am not a lacquer guy. I am sort of, there's very few things I take a moral stance on. I believe that the only reason people use lacquers is because they dry quick, not because they're better. So for my company, for my goals, for my clients, I still am a fan of oil varnish. It does bring out a lot of very interesting characteristics of these woods. For Brazilian cherry, honestly, I wouldn't stain it at all. The only thing you can do to it is turn it brown.
Yep. That's a wood. So back to my days of having a flooring business, we did some Brazilian cherry, and that was a if we wanted a dark floor, let's use a dark wood.
Yep.
Don't use a white oak.
Yep. Don't put a maple floor down and want to turn it chestnut brown or something. I mean,
Right.
It can be done. It's a pain in the rear end. You got to water pop it and stain it and all this other stuff. So honestly, that stuff ages a lot too. It darkens with time. So if you can, just like regular cherry, if you can talk your clients out of staining it, fine. I have stained it before too, but the only thing you can do is turn it browner, because you can't turn it redder if we're talking about the Brazilian cherry, and you can't turn it lighter. And the only other way to go with it is maybe yellower, but the finish will impart a little bit of gold into it.
I don't think I've ever seen a Brazilian cherry floor stained.
No, the only time I've even done it is I've stained a lot of decks outside to turn the colors, but the interior woodwork, the only thing you can do is turn it super deep brown. That's about it. So I honestly, and lacquers, I say this knowing that 90% of the industry is pre-cat lacquers and nitrocellulose lacquers. They're not good finishes, and they only dry quicker, and I know they meet a certain need in the industry. I'm just not a fan. My clients don't like them, and I get called into a lot of houses to fix bad windows in Minnesota. We have tons of moisture there. And
lacquer doesn't like moisture.
Lacquered, all those white rings you see on side tables, those are lacquer, and that's actually moisture trapped underneath the lacquer that can't escape. Oil varnish does not do that. Conversion varnish does not do that. And shellac may not do that. Shellac is way more like lacquer, but I wouldn't use shellac as a standard finish. It's Colby Davis. We know Colby. Thanks for watching. Chad Merriam, Minnesota painting contractor. Dan Ross. We love Dan Ross. Dan Ross is out in California. Awesome guy. If you've never talked to Dan, talk to Dan. All right. Let's see what else we got. Mike Danahy says hi. I've experienced a business that grew too fast. It was like a freight train. Yeah, that's tough. And I have these conversations all the time. I was sitting in my local cafe. A painter from the area who is a sole proprietor came up to me, and he follows me on Facebook. He's like, hey, very interesting to see what you're doing. You'll get wise, and you'll stop what you're doing soon and go back down to, I've been there too, Nick. I've done what you're doing, and I got wise, and I went back down to me alone. And I don't know, it's not right, it's not wrong, but it's I guess it's wrong to impose that on somebody else, because he has no idea what our goals are, and I have no idea. I mean, it would be foolish of me to say you're not successful because you don't have a 30-man business, because that may not be his goals, So it's interesting, but we do see a lot of that sort of uncontrolled growth, and I think a lot of that has to do with, of all the variables in your business, a lot of them aren't solved. So most of my coding systems are as perfect as they're going to be for now until something changes. The admin side is streamlined to a point where I spend 18 hours a year doing book work for my business. That's what I've gotten it down to. So I can't shave that log anymore. That's as far down as it goes. I've removed a lot of variables. So when I decided to expand rapidly, the only variable I had was the people I hired. So I could spend 100% of my time with those people. If you didn't know how to do your book work, if you still had a lot of questions about how to paint, what to paint, where to paint, and then you add a bunch of people on it, no wonder that it's problematic. So try to solve as many variables as you can. That's what I've sort of been focusing on. So, JP Carlton, Nick May, having attended Crank, what part section are you most excited for with 2.0? Please say my master's class, please.
I was going to say, I'm super excited that I don't have to be the MC.
Yeah.
JP knows I was running around this place like a friggin', chicken.
You got the content and you had to run it too.
And then every night I was like, oh crap, I got to clean this place up.
Yeah.
Because they're coming back tomorrow.
That's right. That's right.
I love telling my story. That's where we'll start on Saturday morning. But of course, I love marketing day.
Mm-hmm.
We've expanded marketing a little bit. We're talking this time about we're spending a couple of hours on video content.
Mm-hmm.
We've got my team, so I've pulled my team in because we now do web and marketing services for paint contractors, and so I decided to just invite my whole team and let them talk.
No, that's awesome.
Instead of me talking about what they do, let's just have them. So that's probably the most excited about.
I didn't go to the first crank, but you also mentioned that you expanded some of the breakout sessions, actual discussions and things like that.
Yep,
So
we're allowing more time for us to really digest. So it feels like the sessions are going to be shorter than they were last time. I was telling you last night, after about 45 minutes, you start to see the eyes kind of glaze over, and you see the people, their heads are down, and not that you did that, JP, at the last crank, but
people have an interest span, and
we've shrunk the sessions, but we've added probably more sessions. So
nice, very nice. Oh, Tina Kerber, one of my apprentices too. Mike McGrath, Danny Livingston, Eddie Gurman. I really need to make a change. I know I'm doing it wrong. This is supposed to be a hobby. That's awesome. I love that. Most of us founders, if you ask 1,000 kindergartners what they want to be when they grow up, my kids are the only one that'll say painters. The rest of you, nobody aspires to this a lot of the time. It's something we find ourselves doing.
When you were their age, were you wanting to be a painter?
I sort of just assumed I was going to be a painter. I had no aspiration. I just sort of did it. I figured that's the old man does. I'm disturbed by how little thought I put into my life up until about 25. I mean, not a lot of young people do it. Looking back, I had no thoughts. I just joined the Army. Didn't think about it. Didn't compare Air Force. Didn't do that. Didn't compare college right away. I was just like, Army, and then I did it.
Yeah.
Like, how little thought I put into a lot of that stuff. It worked out well, but still. Truth, experienced painter is always a gamble. I had great luck with guys that have been held back at a grunt position and treated poorly. I hear that all the time. I've been prepping for 6 years. And then you give a guy a chance to run a sprayer. I recently had a teacher, a super ambitious teacher, who worked during the summer for a big commercial painting company, and years and years and years later, they didn't let him paint. He was masking his entire summer. He was giving up his free summers as a teacher, masking. His first week he was spraying with me. He's like, oh, this is the greatest thing. He actually got to do the thing that he was doing.
People want to grow. You've got to lay out.
It's the truth.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's the hard thing about being a small contractor, is that if you don't have a growth pattern for them, where are they going to go?
Yeah,
There's that glass ceiling. But if you've got a trajectory and a place for them to grow to, and say, if you get to here, then you can make more money, you can have more responsibility. Yeah.
Gustavo, and we'll wrap this up shortly here, guys. We got a lot of content, but we're going to be going heavy into this over the next bunch of days. So, Nick May, what's the best way for me to connect with interior designers?
Show up at interior design events. Just like we have PDCA, interior designers have ASID, and then there's the NKBA. Those are two of probably the biggest organizations that are in most cities. So NKBA is National Kitchen and Bath. ASID is American Society of Interior Designers. And then your local just design community will have events. Put a nice shirt on. There's usually wine. Bring lots of business cards. Talk to people. But be consistent. That's the best way to get to know interior designers in your local community. The other way you could do it is connect with me and let me know where you're at, and I can connect you with a designer or two, because I literally know hundreds, if not thousands. So
designers were one of the legs of my three-legged marketing plan last year, and I started with Google. I wanted to connect with some more. a Google map search, made a list, started checking websites. The people that looked like they weren't just, I wanted a going concern, and people that did nicer things.
You didn't want what's called Debbie Decorator.
Debbie Decorator. There's a name for it. Truck in a Truck and Debbie Decorator. So what I wanted was somebody who actually ran a business, though. Like, I don't want to say I don't want the person who just does, something, but I want somebody who runs a business.
So go to their website and look that they have a team.
Yep, that's huge. That's huge. And portfolio
bigger
work
than
will
just
show
them.
a lot. And
Yep.
so I started looking at websites. I made a list of 20, and I followed them on social media. I started messaging them a little bit, so they got to know me a little bit. The return ratio on that is very low because you're a stranger contacting them through social media. You do it enough, and then you send a card or a letter or an email to them, and then pretty soon they start saying, oh, this is a serious person. And I probably had interviews with about 40% of the ones I contacted in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's not like, it takes time.
Yeah.
It's gaining the trust of somebody.
Take them
they're
to
a client.
take them to coffee or take them to lunch.
Huge.
And then let them know that you would love for them to do a blog for you,
Mm-hmm.
and you will promote them on your site,
Mhm.
and you will send it out to your customer base. So if you can promote them to your customers, you're giving them value,
Mhm.
and then they're going to want to know what is it that you do, and I should probably work with you. They're all looking for painters all of the time.
Oh, absolutely. And good painters.
Yep.
And good everybody.
Communicate well. Over communicate.
Yep.
Let them know how you like to operate.
Yeah, and oddly enough, in this market, at least I when I say this market, I mean, like Minnesota, upper Midwest, I've been finding that when I want people to, home builders or designers, to submit work to me, I basically make a proposition to them, like, I have the ability to do a very highly detailed estimate for you within 24 hours. And in 11 years, I've also never gone over an estimate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a proposition where they can't even get painters on the horn, even their current painters. So if nothing else, they're like, well, hell, send it to him. At least I'll get something back. So that's been an interesting thing. That strategy probably won't work in a different market, but right now that seems to be a good value proposition. Just getting an estimate, a professional estimate, quickly. So
Yeah, they have a hard time right now finding contractors that will show up, that will call them back. So if you can do that, a lot of times that's going to be your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm. And be prepared. You know this better than anybody, that designers are a certain type of people. People who hire designers are a certain type of people. So be prepared to up your personal interaction game. This isn't an absentee owner a lot of the times. It's somebody who has a very distinct set of requests for you. And you have to follow them, and you have to be personable. All your people have to be personable. You have to be presentable. It's sort of it's not just to be a good painter, and that doesn't seem like enough after a while. You need to be.
Yep, and two things I will recommend. If you've never worked with a designer, know that they want to know that you treat designers special,
Mm-hmm.
and so have it already figured out. Am I going to offer them a referral fee? How are you going to work with them?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to, typically what we've done is we'll give a 10% discount if we're going under their company.
Mm-hmm.
And if they just do a referral to their client, and I'm working directly with the homeowner, I will give them a 5% referral fee.
Nice.
So, but I let them know that up front. That's my standard. If I'm going to work for them, I don't give a shit how much they mark it up.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get your panties in a wad. Don't be
Yeah.
like, they're marking me up 40%. Good for them. They've sold your job.
If they get
Doesn't
you work.
matter. And they can get you repeat work.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then the other thing is don't ever second guess their designs. I don't care if they've designed the worst color in the world. If the homeowner asks you, oh my God, this is fantastic. I love that. And this is really out of the box, but I love it. I would have never thought of this.
Yeah.
Don't ever be like, I would never, build up your designer and really don't give your opinion. Like,
that's good advice.
They hate that.
I've gotten into these horrible positions where there's no right answer, where the client, you're working with a designer, they have a design, and halfway through the project, the client's like, so what do you think of the colors? And you're like, oh yeah, there's no right answer to this. Because there is a better answer, but what's happening is they're questioning their designer, and they're putting you in that position to help you question their designer. So anyway, refer to the designer. I hate to be that goomper on the site that says, hey ma'am, I'm just here to paint. I'm going to do a really good job, but sometimes you have to just put your tail between your legs. And
think about it in the designer standpoint, right? They've been trained, maybe they've not been trained,
Yeah.
who knows? This customer of theirs has hired them,
Yeah.
and they have put their knowledge to good use.
Yep.
And they have worked hard, just like you have put hard work into what you've done. And then some guy that's the painter has said, oh, well, they don't, their design isn't very good. And they've brought you the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't make them look bad.
It's tough.
Okay?
It is tough.
All right.
So,
We got to go.
We got
more prep to do.
And I got to figure out, I got to prep myself for all this stuff because evidently you have a pretty big role for me. So,
Right.
Yeah. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I do appreciate everybody watching the PDCA. Thank you so much. Painting and Decorating Contractors of America, largest group of the best painting contractors in the world. I have my Northeast tour coming up in a couple weeks here. I'll be going to 4 states in the Northeast giving my master's classes. The commercial forum is, I believe, this next week if you guys are going to that. There is a craftsmanship forum, which is coming up in Portland, which I will be attending, and I will be giving at least one master's class. And then there's the National Expo, which happens in, I believe, early March. I want to say late February, it might be early March this year, down in Savannah, Georgia, and that's going to be awesome. My wife will actually be joining me for that one, so we're going to go see Savannah.
It's March.
Yep. So, all right, everybody, thank you so much for this. Thank you for the PDCA for underwriting this, bringing us more of these good paint contractors. Keep watching for posts from Crank. We have 2.5 days of some super intense business stuff going on here, and it's all about painting businesses, and there'll be lots of updates. So, thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for Nick May for joining today.
Thanks, guys.